So now the Rebbe is going back to explain the kasha, the question that he asked in the beginning. Why is it the Shmini Atzeres? Why is it not mentioned by the day of the month? And we call it the eighth, while it's a regel b'fnei atzmai, because the Rebbe explains that on Shmini Atzeres it comes down all in Yonim um, from the 7 days of Sukkot, and specifically because Sukkot is milmailo lamato the hamshocha, and they come down into the mato, and especially on Yom HaShmini. So it's basically the eighth, and because of it, eighth makes it unique, makes it a chag b'fnei atzmai because of its power that it is able to take all the previous hamshochas to bring it down. That makes it in the yontiv. Let's see what the Rebbe says inside. V'zehu b'yoyim ashmini atzeres tiyulochem. The zeh nikra b'shem shmini atzeres, the fact we call it the eighth day, it's not the day a month by itself, but it's the eighth day. Shemoide al zeh shebo behemshech lemei zayin yemei hasukos davke. That points to the fact that this is specifically a continuation to the days of Sukkot. Now, why Sukkot? We said before, by Kesel, Yom Chagenu, everything that took place, Sarisime Tshuva, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, also come down. So the Av Shebishmini Atzeres Ne'etzorim V'Niklotim, Gam Ho'inyonim Rosh Hashanah V'Yom Kippurim, even though that in Shmini Atzeres also are brought down, held, and absorbed, not only Sukkot, but also the areas, the aspects of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. But Kiberesh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim or Inyan Ha'aliyah Milmata L'mayla. Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, over there is elevation from below to above. Umikivon Shahakavone Hi L'Shavas Yitzorah. But the intention of Hashem and purpose is to settle. Hashem created the world to settle, not elevation, but rather to bring it down below. Hamshacha milmailo lamato, to bring down from above to below. Lochein nikro b'shem shmini atzeres. That's why we call it the eighth of atzeres. Sheboy ne'etzorim v'niklotim kol ha'inyonim shenimshachu milmailo lamato b'zayin yemei hasukis. In it, in Shmini Atzeres, is held up and absorbed all aspects that have been drawn down milmailo lemato in the 7th day of Sukkot, specifically while it is everything absorbed in it, also the aliyahs, but the goal is the bringing it down. And that's the Shmini Atzeres, specifically bringing down the Hamshocha Shalochein Nikra B'Shem Shmini Davke. That's why we call it specifically Shmini. And the Rebbe adds in the brackets, Noisef Lozeh Shmini Meloshen Shuman V'Doshen. In addition, that Shmini means also fat and thick, meaning that it's very strong, has a lot in it. So it's also Shmini because it has the absorption of all 7 days of Hamshachas from before in it, absorbed and held up in the Shmini Atzeres. So why is it a Yom Tov by itself if it's really a follow-up to the 7 days? Hello. Sha'afal pikein Shmini Atzeres uregel b'fnei atzmai. Still, Shmini Atzeres is a Yom Tov by itself. K'al yidei ze gufa ma'ashe b'Shmini Atzeres netzorim v'niklotim ha'inyonim design yimei hasukos. Through this itself, the fact that on Shmini Atzeres, all things are stopped and absorbed of all the 7 days of Sukkot, so it's not a Shmini, but Nasa Ba'in Chodesh. That creates in Shmini Atzeres something new, Regel Bifnei Atzmai, its own Yom Tov. Ki bezayin Yimei HaSukkos, because the 7 days of Sukkot nimshachim bibchinas makiv, and 7 days Sukkot come down in a makiv dik way. Ha'inyonim de Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim, the aspects of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur udechlolus aseres yimei tshuva, and generally of aseres yimei tshuva, ad lishleimus hatshuva v'Yom Kippurim, to the completeness of tshuva of Yom Kippur. All these inyonim come down on Sukkot in the first 7 days of Sukkot. But then, Vayidei Hamshachas Inyan Zeh B'Pnimius U'B'Klita B'Shmini Atzeres. And then when they draw down this in an inner and absorb the Shmini Atzeres, and we say Liyoim Chagenu, one day, even though we say Tinku B'Chodesh Shofar B'Kesa, so that whatever comes in B'Kesa then is Chagenu for Sukkot is revealed, but it's Yom, which day? It's the Shmini Atzeres day, Loshen Yochid. Mizgal Ba'ofen de Klita. So when it comes down on Shmini Atzeres, in that special day, all the Hamshoches, his Kashrus v'his Achdus, the Bechinas Yechida Shebenefesh and Bechinas Yochid, the tie and the union of the level of Yechida of the soul with the level of Yochid with Hashem, this is all revealed, and it comes in an absorbed way by the Yidden. Shalishom Magia Inyan HaTshuva, because the level of Teshuvah reaches all the ways to the level of Yochid. That's where the person's Yechida reaches Yochid. And Par Echod Ayel Echod, which you bring a Shmini Atzeres, one bull, one ram, that's the Echod, one, that's the level of Yechida, Yochid. Bezehu Gamkein, this also explains when we say Atzeres Tia Lochem, and he asked before the question that Isa b'Medrash Ado Diksiv should be for you, Yilchol Levadcha, only for you, but ve'ein lezorim itcha, there's no others with you. They asked the question, but there is nobody else there. When we talk about lecho, lavatcha, of course there's no, why do we need to say lecho lavatcha, you or Hashem? Why do we have to add that strangers are not there? The reason we need to negate and to express and say that their strangers have no part there, because we're talking level of tshuva. About tshuva shesuri ra, his tendency is to go. He's been used to it, so his tendency is ra. You need to extra precautions. And that's what we need to negate, reject things that are not desirable. We have to negate them because we're talking about tshuva who comes in surera. Avo, days gufa, but through this itself, azhirus yisera, the Baal Tshuva, that extra precaution that the Baal Tshuva has, Nase Yiu L'chol Levatcha, that makes it L'chol Levatcha. Because you make sure that Ein Lezorim Itoch, then you reach to the level L'chol Levatcha. K'ayidei Zeh Sha'at Tshuva Magaz Batzmusi Yisbarach, because through this that Tshuva reaches the blessed Atzmos, Harai Lo Yishayich Shom Shum Nisinas Mokim Lezorim. So there is no place there for strangers. So before he asked the kasha if it's levadcha, how come we have to say Ein Lezorim Ito don't have no place? Of course, there's no place for them. But he says the reason he gets to L'chol Levatcho is because Ein Lezorim Ito. That's the way the tshuva reaches Batzmusei. There's no place for strangers. Yisrael Malkal B'chidoy. It's a Yidden and their king alone. Adrabe, and the contrary, mitzad hamshochas atzmos al yidei avodas hatshuva, that because of bringing down, drawing down atzmos, it's not only that you're now basically cured and disconnected from any connection to zorim, mainly zorim itcho, but actually you're able to transform the zorim to the level of kedusha. Be'adrabe, tzad amshochas ha'atzmus al yidei avodas hatshuva, because you're drawing down atzmus through the service of tshuva. Mizgale pnimis va'amitis hakavone da'asiyas enyonim abilti ritzuyim. So now it's revealed the inner and true intention why these matters that are undesirable, why they are in the first place. That's revealed through this drawing down from Atzma. What is the kavana? That what? This is kavana tchila. That this was actually in the intention for the person to do these negative things than to do tshuva on them. The pasuk says, as we know about, it says in the pasuk, that Hashem, the awesome one, comes with unfounded complaints against the people, because he's the one that caused them to do the Averis. It's the Kavona. That was the intention. She is the reason we made the mistakes, listen, we did the violations, is so that we can turn the darkness to light. Hafichas hasdoinus lezochiyos, to turn these sins into merits. So that is, Shmini עצרת is associated specifically to the level of tshuva, because on Shmini עצרת we bring down the connection of the Yid with the Eibishter, because the level of teshuva that took place during the Yom Tov, and then it came down on Sukkot from the Makif, and it comes down into a Pnimius. Shmini Atzeres has that level of shleimus of tshuva of Yom Kippurim, and we bring that down is specifically. So while Sukkot is also by Yom Kesel Yom Chagenu, but the Yom is a single one, the most specific and individual day that gets this whole level of teshuva is Dafki Shmini Atzeres, because it gets level of teshuva, it gets it to the highest level, and that brings it down. That it is revealed the atzmos, that the reason the failure to begin with was instigated by atzmos noida lila bnei adam, in order to make the zdoinus turn into zochis. Yud Beis. וזהו גם כי מה שקובע שמחת תורה בשמיני עצרת הלוכס האחרונס תפקד. This is also the reason why they said Simchas Torah on Shmini Atzeres, which is for the later luchas which were given on Yom Kippur. Shagilu the luchas ha'achronis inyan hatshuva d'yom kippurim b'pnimis u'b'klito b'Shmini Atzeres. The revelation of the last luchas, which is tshuva of Yom Kippurim, is in an inner and absorbed the Shmini Atzeres kinal. So that's why it's connected after Yom Kippur, after the luchas achronis. Simcha de Simchas Torah, the joy of Simchas Torah, he beikar mitzad zeh shehaTorah pa'eles gam binyonim atachtonim shem ba'elam. It's mainly because the Torah impacts even the lowest parts of the world. The zehu masha simcha, the Simchas Torah, this is the reason The joy of Simchas Torah, birikudim beraglayim. It's dancing with the feet. Ubahem gufa, and within the feet itself, ba'ekiv shubahem, in the heel, the bottom of the foot. V'lochein hasimcha ila luchis hachreines dafke. That's what the joy is for the later luchas, which is the level of Baal Tshuva, Inyan HaTshuva, which brings it down to the lowest level. Because through Tshuva you sort out Gamachi Tachtin Shebe'olam, also the very lowest places in the world. Ad Shegam Hazdoines Napoch Nazochies, to the extent that the sins turn into merits. And just like in a physical dance, when they raise themselves, you raise the feet, raise up, and they dance, they also raise the head. The head is also raised together with the rest of the feet. The feet go up and the head goes up with it. And the power of the intellect, that he too dances with a great simcha, beyond measure and limitation. So likewise, it's also in the spiritual aspects. Through the joy and the dancing of Simchas Torah, it also brings an elevation and raising also in the head of the neshama on the spiritual sense. Since a person, Adam, is compared to the Supreme, to Hashem, so through happening by the person that his intellect is raised, so this is, so to speak, in the Eibishter's wisdom, which is Torah, that's the Eibishter's Chochmah, there's an Aliyah. It's also understood from the fact that when you dance in the hakofis, gam ha-Torah is smeicha berekedes. The Torah itself is rejoicing in dancing. As the known saying of our Rebbe, our leader, the priest Rebbe, said that the person becomes the legs of the Torah. The Torah wants to dance. So when you dance, the Torah is dancing. And then with Simcha Peretz together, this joy breaks through all boundaries. Simcha, the Simchas Torah, the joy of Simchas Torah, Peretzes, Gam Hageder, the Torah Kaviyachol. It breaches through also the limitation, so to speak, of Torah itself. That Torah mitzad atzmo, Torah on its own, he b'medido v'hagabola. It's measured, limited. The Simchas Torah, through the joy and the dancing of Simchas Torah, mamshichim bo ma'atzmus yizborach. So we bring down atzmus, blessed atzmus, into the Torah. Keniskar li'il, as mentioned earlier, al derech maimer azal, similar to the saying of our sages of blessed memory, David, he connected the Torah above to Hashem. This is the hamshacha we bring from Atzmas through our dancing in Torah to be drawn down in the Torah L'mayla. Just as we accomplish this in the Torah al derech zeh, u'b'neshamas Yisrael. This is also similarly in the Jewish soul. Through the joy and the dancing of Simchas Torah, so then it becomes an elevation and a raising in the head of the neshama. The legs raise the whole body in the head of the neshama. They raise, we said, the Chochmah. The Chochmah is Torah. The Mamshich Atzmus in Torah. Same thing is the Neshama. Shemiskasher, they're raising the Neshama. Shemiskasheres, the Nasis Chad Mamesh Ima Atzmus. It gets tied and it becomes one with Atzmus. Su'us es Rosh Goyim. As the Pasuk says, raise the head to this call, which means bringing them up all the ways to the source. Mainly, this thing will be, even though it's in the Pasuk in talking about the count in the Midbar, it's going to be mainly in the 10th counting, in which the Pasuk says, the sheep will still pass through the counter. The Eibshter will count us and raise us. So, this is all accomplished, as I said before, through our work, our labor in the time of exile. Especially after the revelation of the teaching of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the Zoyar from which we go out of Golus, Yifkun Beimin Golus Berachmim, as we'll see, the Hispanison is not just revelation, but in a way that you can be sort of fed and sustained by it. Teres Chasidus Chabad, the teaching of Baal Shem Tov and the teaching of Chasidus Chabad, they brought down the Gilu Teres Harashbi in a way to sustain, to support the Yivkun Bei Min Gelusa Berechemim. And with that, they will go out from exile with mercy. The Simchas Olam al Rosham, with the internal joy on their head. The Geula Amitis V'Ashlema, the Korev Mamash, with the true and complete redemption very soon. The Bias Mashiach Tzidkenu, with the coming of a righteous Mashiach. David Malka Mashiach, David King Mashiach.